I'm about to reveal something that might save your life. Something about what you're doing every single night before bed. You think it's harmless. You think it's normal. Everyone does it. You've been doing it for years without thinking twice. But there's a very high chance this one habit is actively raising your blood pressure while you sleep, destroying your cardiovascular system in ways you can't feel, and making your blood pressure medications work less effectively. And you have absolutely no idea it's happening. What I'm about to share will shock you. It goes against everything you've been told about blood pressure. Your doctor probably never mentioned this. Nobody ever connected your evening habit to your blood pressure readings. But the research is clear, undeniable, and published in major medical journals. This single-night habit is one of the most powerful, silent drivers of elevated blood pressure in seniors, and stopping it can drop blood pressure almost immediately, sometimes within days. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what this habit is, why it's destroying your blood pressure while you sleep, and most importantly, what to replace it with so you don't feel deprived or lost in the evening hours. Because I'm not just going to tell you what to stop. I'm going to give you a complete replacement system that actually lowers your blood pressure instead of raising it. A system so simple and so effective that some of my patients have seen their blood pressure drop by 15 or 20 points just from changing their evening routine. Stay with me, because what you learn in this video could be the difference between your blood pressure finally responding to treatment and continuing to climb despite everything you're doing right. Let me tell you about Dorothy. And I need you to listen very carefully to this story because I promise you, you are going to see yourself in it. Dorothy was 74 years old. She was a good woman, responsible, disciplined in most areas of her life. She took her medications exactly as prescribed. She went to every doctor's appointment. She walked 20 minutes most mornings because her doctor told her exercise was important. She tried to eat well during the day, fruits at breakfast, a salad at lunch, some chicken or fish for dinner. Dorothy had been on blood pressure medication for 9 years, started with one pill at 65. Her doctor said it was just a precaution. Blood pressure was 140/88. Nothing alarming, just slightly above the target. One pill. Simple. But Dorothy's blood pressure never really came down the way her doctor wanted. 140 became 143, then 147, then 151. Her doctor added a second medication. Dorothy took both pills faithfully every morning. Blood pressure dropped briefly to 138, then crept back up. 142, 145, 149. By the time Dorothy came to see me, she was on 3 blood pressure medications. 3 pills every single morning. And her blood pressure was averaging 152/94. Still elevated. Still climbing. Her doctor was frustrated. Dorothy was frightened. She was doing everything she was told to do. Taking her pills, walking every morning, eating reasonably well, and nothing was working. But here's what nobody had asked Dorothy about. Nobody had asked about her evenings. Every evening, after dinner, Dorothy would sit in her favorite recliner and watch television. This was her routine, her comfort, the part of the day she looked forward to most. She'd finish dinner around 6:30 or 7, and then she'd settle into her chair with a cup of tea. And almost always, she'd have something to snack on. Sometimes it was crackers with a little cheese. Sometimes it was cookies her daughter had brought over. Sometimes it was a bowl of cereal, which she thought of as healthy because the box said it was high in fiber. Sometimes it was toast with peanut butter. Sometimes it was leftover pasta from dinner, reheated in the microwave. Sometimes it was chips. Sometimes it was fruit and yogurt, which she genuinely believed was a healthy snack. Dorothy didn't think of this as eating. It was snacking, mindless, comfortable, something to do with her hands while watching her shows. She didn't track it. She didn't think about it carefully. It was just part of her evening. But here's what Dorothy didn't know. Every single one of those evening snacks, regardless of whether it was healthy or not, was triggering a cascade of physiological events inside her body that were raising her blood pressure while she slept. Events that her morning blood pressure pills couldn't fully counteract. Events that were happening night after night, week after week, month after month, year after year. Silently, invisibly, raising her numbers every time her doctor checked them. Dorothy's evenings were destroying her blood pressure, and she had absolutely no idea. But Dorothy's story doesn't end with the blood pressure numbers, because blood pressure is just a measurement on a monitor. It doesn't capture what was actually happening to Dorothy's life. Dorothy couldn't sleep properly. She'd been suffering from poor sleep for years and chalked it up to getting older. Everyone told her that sleep gets worse as you age. "That's just how it is," her friends said. "You'll learn to deal with it." So Dorothy dealt with it. She'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. She'd wake at 3 and toss and turn for an hour before giving up and going to the kitchen for a glass of water. She'd feel exhausted by noon and sometimes nap in the afternoon, which then made it even harder to fall asleep at night. A vicious cycle she couldn't escape. Her doctor prescribed a sleep medication at one point. Dorothy took it for 2 weeks and stopped because it made her feel groggy and disoriented all day. She went back to lying awake and wondering why her body couldn't do the one thing it was supposed to do automatically: sleep. Dorothy's energy was gone. Simple tasks that used to take minutes now took an hour. Grocery shopping left her breathless and exhausted. She'd come home and sit on the couch for 30 minutes recovering before she could put anything away. Gardening, which she'd loved for decades, was impossible now. She'd kneel down to pull weeds and feel so dizzy she had to sit on the ground until it passed. She stopped gardening entirely. Another piece of her life quietly disappearing. Her memory was failing her in ways that frightened her deeply. She'd call her daughter and forget what she'd called about halfway through the conversation. She'd walk into the kitchen and stand there for 30 seconds trying to remember why she'd come. She'd forget if she'd taken her pills that morning and take them again, which her doctor said could be dangerous. She started keeping a written log, checking it before every dose. But sometimes she forgot to check the log. Dorothy was terrified of dementia. Her aunt had developed Alzheimer's at 76 and spent the last 4 years of her life not recognizing anyone. Not her husband of 50 years. Not her children, not herself. Dorothy visited once and watched her aunt look at her with blank, polite eyes, as though she were a stranger making a social call. Dorothy left that visit and sat in her car crying for 20 minutes. That was 5 years before she came to see me, and the fear had only intensified. She'd read that high blood pressure, especially elevated blood pressure during sleep, was one of the strongest risk factors for cognitive decline and dementia. She'd read about the microstrokes, the tiny bleeds, the accumulating damage. And every time she saw her blood pressure reading, 152/94, still elevated despite 3 medications, she thought about her aunt, about the blank eyes, about losing herself piece by piece until there was nothing left to lose. Dorothy wasn't sleeping well. She wasn't eating well. She wasn't exercising. She wasn't enjoying her life. She was surviving. Going through the motions, taking her pills, watching her television, eating her crackers, going to bed, lying awake, waking tired, doing it all again the next day. And her blood pressure kept climbing, and nobody could figure out why. Nobody asked about the crackers. Dorothy wasn't alone in this, not even close. When I look at the patterns in my patients with stubborn, hard-to-control blood pressure, patients who are taking their medications faithfully and still seeing elevated numbers, one of the most common factors is evening eating. Late snacking. Food consumed within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime. It's one of the most overlooked, most underestimated, most completely ignored contributors to elevated blood pressure in seniors, and almost no doctor asks about it. But before I tell you exactly what's happening and exactly how to stop it, I need you to understand something about what happens to your body during the night. Because understanding this is the key to everything. Most people think blood pressure is a constant thing. You get it checked at the doctor's office, you see a number, and that's your blood pressure. But that's not how it works at all. Blood pressure changes throughout the day. It follows a rhythm, a pattern, a cycle that repeats every 24 hours. And this cycle is controlled by something called your circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock. Here's how it's supposed to work in a healthy person. Blood pressure rises gradually in the early morning hours, peaking around 9 or 10 a.m. This prepares your cardiovascular system for the activities of the day. Throughout the afternoon and evening, blood pressure gradually decreases. And during sleep, blood pressure drops significantly, usually by 10 to 20% below daytime levels. This nighttime drop is critical. It's not optional. It's not nice to have. It is essential for your cardiovascular system to recover and repair itself. This nighttime blood pressure dip is one of the most important indicators of cardiovascular health. People whose blood pressure drops normally during sleep have significantly lower risk of heart attack, stroke, heart failure, and cardiovascular death compared to people whose blood pressure doesn't dip properly during the night. And here's what's terrifying. People whose blood pressure fails to drop during sleep, a condition doctors call non-dipping, have dramatically elevated cardiovascular risk. Studies show that non-dippers have 2 to 3 times the risk of cardiovascular events compared to normal dippers. 2 to 3 times. That means if your blood pressure isn't dropping properly while you sleep, you're carrying 2 to 3 times the normal risk of stroke, of heart attack, of heart failure, of dying from a cardiovascular cause. Comment below right now if you've ever had your blood pressure checked during sleep, or if your doctor has ever discussed nighttime blood pressure with you. Type "never discussed" if this is the first time you've heard that blood pressure is supposed to drop at night, because I'd bet the vast majority of you have never heard this. Your doctor checks your blood pressure during the day, in the office, while you're sitting in a chair. They never ask about what happens to your blood pressure while you're sleeping. They never check it. They never discuss it. But nighttime blood pressure matters as much as daytime blood pressure, maybe more. And one of the most reliable ways to destroy your nighttime blood pressure dip, to keep your blood pressure elevated while you sleep when it should be dropping, is to eat within the last 2 to 3 hours before bed. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly why eating before bed does this, yet. I'm not going to explain the mechanism, yet. Because first you need to understand what happens to Dorothy when her blood pressure doesn't dip properly during the night. Because this isn't abstract. This isn't theoretical. This is happening inside Dorothy's body right now. And it might be happening inside yours. When Dorothy went to sleep after her evening snacks, her blood pressure didn't drop the way it was supposed to. Instead of falling 15 or 20% during sleep, it stayed elevated. Sometimes it barely dropped at all. Some nights it actually rose during the first few hours of sleep. Her cardiovascular system never got the recovery time it needed. Every night without proper blood pressure dipping was another night of damage. Damage to the walls of her arteries. Damage to her heart muscle, which was working harder than it should during the hours it was supposed to be resting. Damage to her kidneys, which filter your blood and regulate fluid balance and need that nighttime pressure drop to function properly. Damage to her brain, where elevated pressure during sleep promotes the formation of tiny microstrokes that accumulate silently over years until suddenly memory fails. Dorothy didn't feel any of this damage happening. That's the cruelty of it. You don't feel arterial damage. You don't feel kidney damage accumulating. You don't feel your brain being slowly eroded by microstrokes during sleep. You feel nothing until suddenly you feel everything. Until suddenly you're having a stroke. Until suddenly your kidneys are failing. Until suddenly your doctor is telling you your memory problems are severe enough to warrant a diagnosis. Dorothy's mother had died from a stroke at 78. Dorothy's older sister had developed stage 3 kidney disease at 72. Dorothy lived with the knowledge that cardiovascular disease ran in her family, that she was vulnerable, that her elevated blood pressure was putting her at risk for exactly the same fates that had claimed her mother and compromised her sister. And every night, without knowing it, Dorothy was making that risk worse. Not by forgetting her pills, not by ignoring her doctor, by eating a few crackers and cheese while watching her evening television show. By doing something so ordinary, so innocent, so unremarkable that nobody ever questioned it. Dorothy came to see me after her doctor had recommended adding a 4th blood pressure medication. 4 pills. Dorothy was devastated. She sat in my office with her hands folded in her lap and said, "I'm doing everything right. I take my pills, I walk every morning, I try to eat well. Why isn't it working? What am I doing wrong?" And that's when I asked her the question that changed everything. "Dorothy, what do you eat in the evening, after dinner, before bed? Tell me exactly what you eat and when you eat it." Dorothy looked at me with slight confusion. "In the evening? I mean, I have dinner around 6:30, and then I might have a little snack while I watch TV. A few crackers or some cookies or a bowl of cereal. Nothing much. Is that important?" I told her it might be the most important thing we'd discuss today. But I'm not going to tell you exactly what we did to fix Dorothy's situation yet. I need you to understand why first. I need you to understand the biology. Because once you understand what eating before bed is actually doing to your cardiovascular system, you will never look at your evening snack the same way again. You'll feel almost physically uncomfortable at the thought of it, and you'll be motivated to change in a way that no amount of willpower alone could achieve. So let me explain what happens inside your body when you eat within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime. And I want you to pay very close attention because this is where it gets genuinely frightening. When you eat, regardless of what you eat, your body releases insulin. Insulin is a hormone your pancreas produces in response to food, specifically in response to blood glucose rising after you eat carbohydrates. Even small amounts of carbohydrates trigger insulin release. Crackers, toast, cereal, fruit, even the carbohydrates in cheese and peanut butter and yogurt. Everything you eat that contains any carbohydrate at all triggers an insulin response. During the day, this is completely normal and healthy. Your body is active. Your muscles are using glucose for energy. Insulin facilitates the uptake of glucose into cells. Everything functions as it's designed to function. But at night, your body is preparing for sleep. Your metabolism is slowing. Your muscles are about to stop working. Your activity level is about to drop to its lowest point of the day. And if you eat right before sleep, you trigger an insulin response at exactly the wrong time. An insulin response when your body doesn't need it, when your muscles aren't going to use the glucose, when your body is transitioning into rest mode. And here's where it gets dangerous for your blood pressure. Elevated insulin, especially nighttime insulin, raises blood pressure through multiple pathways simultaneously. Insulin causes your kidneys to retain sodium. Your kidneys are constantly filtering your blood, deciding what to keep and what to excrete. Insulin tells them to hold on to sodium. When you retain sodium, you retain water along with it. Blood volume increases. More volume in your blood vessels means higher pressure. And this sodium retention happens specifically and powerfully in response to nighttime insulin. Insulin activates your sympathetic nervous system. Remember, the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. It constricts blood vessels. It raises heart rate. It raises blood pressure. Eating at night, triggering insulin at night, activates your sympathetic system at exactly the time your body is supposed to be shifting into parasympathetic, rest and digest mode. Instead of your blood pressure dropping during sleep the way it's supposed to, the sympathetic activation from nighttime insulin keeps it elevated. Insulin also promotes inflammation. And inflammation, as research has repeatedly shown, directly damages blood vessel walls, impairs their ability to function properly, and raises blood pressure through mechanisms we've discussed in previous videos. So when Dorothy ate her crackers and cheese at 8 p.m. and went to sleep at 10 p.m., she was triggering an insulin response that was raising her blood pressure at exactly the time it was supposed to be dropping. She was activating her sympathetic nervous system when it should have been quieting down. She was creating inflammation in her blood vessels during the hours when her cardiovascular system was supposed to be recovering and repairing. And this was happening every single night, night after night, for years. While Dorothy took her pills faithfully every morning, believing she was doing everything she could. But the insulin response isn't the only thing happening when you eat before bed. There's something else, something that affects your blood pressure even more directly. When you eat at night, especially if the food is heavy, rich, or fatty, your digestive system activates. Blood flow shifts to your digestive organs. Your stomach produces acid to break down the food. Your intestines work to absorb nutrients. All of this takes energy. All of this creates metabolic activity during hours when your body is supposed to be winding down. And in many seniors, eating at night causes acid reflux. Gastroesophageal reflux disease. The stomach acid backs up into the esophagus. It causes heartburn, sometimes severe. And here's the critical connection that most people miss entirely. Acid reflux disrupts sleep. You might not even realize it's happening. You might just notice you're not sleeping well. You wake up feeling unrested. You have vague discomfort in your chest or throat that you dismiss. But your sleep is being fragmented. And fragmented sleep, even sleep you don't realize is fragmented, keeps your sympathetic nervous system activated, keeps your blood pressure elevated during the night, prevents the critical blood pressure dip that your cardiovascular system needs to recover. So eating before bed creates a cycle. Food triggers insulin, which raises blood pressure. Food triggers digestion and acid production, which causes reflux, which disrupts sleep, which keeps blood pressure elevated. Disrupted sleep prevents the blood pressure dip, which means your cardiovascular system never recovers, which means damage accumulates night after night. And the elevated blood pressure makes your morning pills less effective because you're starting each day from a higher baseline. This cycle, this silent, invisible cycle, is happening in the bodies of millions of seniors every single night, and nobody is talking about it. Are you starting to feel angry? You should be, because the solution is so simple, so obvious, so completely free, and nobody told you about it. Not your doctor, not your pharmacist, not a single person involved in your blood pressure management has ever asked you what you eat in the evening or explained why it matters. Comment below if you eat anything after dinner. Type evening snacker if you have something, anything at all, in the 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep. I want to see how many of you are doing this without any idea it's affecting your blood pressure. Now, you're waiting. You want to know what to do about it, and I'm going to tell you. But first, one more thing you need to understand, because this piece makes the solution even more powerful. Your body has a natural rhythm to how it processes food and how it regulates blood pressure. This rhythm, your circadian rhythm, is controlled by a master clock in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This clock coordinates thousands of biological processes throughout your body, including insulin sensitivity, blood pressure regulation, digestion, hormone production, and inflammation. Research published in the last decade has shown something remarkable. Your insulin sensitivity changes dramatically throughout the day. In the morning, your body is highly insulin sensitive. Food eaten in the morning is processed efficiently. Blood glucose stays stable. Insulin stays relatively low. Blood pressure isn't affected much. But as the day progresses, insulin sensitivity drops. By evening, your body is significantly less insulin sensitive than it was in the morning. Food eaten in the evening triggers a much larger insulin response than the exact same food eaten at breakfast. Much larger. Some studies show insulin responses in the evening are 50 to 100% higher than in the morning for the same meal. 50 to 100% higher. That means the same cracker, the same piece of fruit, the same bowl of cereal triggers twice the insulin response in the evening compared to the morning. And all those blood pressure-raising effects of insulin, the sodium retention, the sympathetic activation, the inflammation, they're all amplified in the evening because the insulin response itself is amplified. This is why the timing of your last meal matters so much for blood pressure. It's not just about what you eat, it's about when you eat it. And eating close to bedtime is the worst possible timing for blood pressure health. Now I can finally tell you what we did with Dorothy, and I promise you it's simpler than you think. And I'm going to give you more than just the one thing we changed. I'm going to give you a complete evening system, a replacement routine that doesn't just stop the damage, but actively works to lower your blood pressure during the night. Because you deserve more than just stop eating at night. You deserve to understand how to make your evening hours work for your cardiovascular health instead of against it. The first and most critical change was stopping all food consumption at least 3 hours before bed. For Dorothy, who went to sleep around 10 p.m., that meant no food after 7 p.m. Her dinner, which she usually ate around 6:30, became her last meal of the day. Nothing after that. No crackers, no cereal, no cookies, no fruit, nothing. This was the hardest part for Dorothy. She was used to her evening snacks. They were comfort, routine, something to do with her hands while watching television. The first week without them felt strange and uncomfortable. She felt restless. She kept reaching for the bowl of crackers that wasn't there anymore. But within 5 days, something remarkable happened. Dorothy started sleeping differently, deeper, more continuously. She wasn't waking up with that vague chest discomfort she'd been experiencing for years without connecting it to anything specific. She was sleeping through the night for the first time in longer than she could remember. After 10 days, she checked her blood pressure one morning. It was 142/86, down from her usual 152/94, 10 points systolic, 8 points diastolic, just from stopping evening eating. She checked again the next morning, 140/84, and the next, 138/82. The numbers kept dropping. But I didn't leave Dorothy with just stop eating at night. That's deprivation. That's white-knuckling it. That leads to giving up within 2 weeks. I gave Dorothy a complete evening replacement system, a routine she could actually enjoy, a routine that filled the space the snacking used to occupy and actively supported her blood pressure health. The first piece of the system is a warm, non-caffeinated herbal tea in the evening. Dorothy started drinking chamomile tea or rooibos tea around 8 p.m. Something warm, something comforting, something to hold in her hands while watching television. Chamomile has been shown in research to have mild blood pressure lowering effects and to improve sleep quality. The warmth itself promotes relaxation, increases blood flow to the skin, and helps lower core body temperature, which signals your body to prepare for sleep. The ritual of preparing and drinking warm tea replaced the ritual of preparing and eating a snack. And all those blood pressure-raising effects of insulin, the sodium retention, the sympathetic activation, the inflammation, they're all amplified in the evening because the insulin response itself is amplified. This is why the timing of your last meal matters so much for blood pressure. It's not just about what you eat, it's about when you eat it. And eating close to bedtime is the worst possible timing for blood pressure health. The second piece is a specific breathing practice in the evening. A short practice, just 2 to 3 minutes, done while drinking the tea. Slow, deep breaths. Inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds. The longer exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It tells your body to start shifting into rest mode. It begins the process of lowering blood pressure naturally, the way it's supposed to lower during the evening hours. You're not just sitting there missing your crackers. You're actively training your nervous system to begin the blood pressure drop that should happen as sleep approaches. The third piece involves what Dorothy ate at dinner, her last meal. Because the quality and composition of that last meal matters enormously for what happens to your blood pressure during the night. Dorothy's dinner needed to be moderate in size. Not huge, not heavy. A normal-sized meal that wouldn't take hours to digest. It needed to be relatively low in refined carbohydrates, because even moderate carb consumption at the last meal of the day triggers meaningful insulin response. It needed to include protein, which is more slowly digested and doesn't spike blood glucose or insulin the way carbohydrates do. And it needed to include foods that actively support blood pressure health overnight. Specifically, I told Dorothy to make sure her dinner included potassium-rich vegetables. Spinach, sweet potato, tomatoes. These foods help counteract the sodium retention that insulin promotes. They help your kidneys excrete excess sodium overnight. They support the blood pressure drop that's supposed to happen during sleep. Potassium works while you sleep. It tells your kidneys to let the sodium go. And if you eat potassium-rich foods at your last meal, that potassium is active in your system during exactly the hours when your kidneys need it most. I also told Dorothy to include a small amount of magnesium-rich food at dinner. A handful of pumpkin seeds, some almonds, dark leafy greens. Magnesium relaxes blood vessels' smooth muscle. It helps blood vessels dilate during sleep. It supports the parasympathetic nervous system. Having magnesium-rich food as your last nutritional input before the long overnight fast means magnesium is available in your system during the critical nighttime hours when your blood vessels need to relax the most. Dorothy implemented this system. Dinner by 7 p.m. at the latest, moderate-sized, with vegetables, protein, and some magnesium-rich foods. Chamomile tea at 8 p.m. while watching television. 2 minutes of slow breathing with the longer exhale while drinking the tea. Nothing else until morning. The results were remarkable, and they came fast. Faster than with almost any other single intervention I've seen for blood pressure. After 2 weeks, Dorothy's average blood pressure had dropped from 152/94 to 138/82. 14 points systolic, 12 points diastolic. Her doctor was stunned. "What did you do?" he asked. Dorothy told him about the evening changes. Her doctor had never connected her evening eating to her blood pressure. He had no idea this was a factor. After 6 weeks, her average was 132/78. Her doctor reduced one of her 3 medications. Dorothy's sleep had transformed. She was sleeping 7 continuous hours for the first time in years. Her energy during the day improved dramatically because she was actually getting restorative sleep. Her digestive discomfort disappeared entirely. Dorothy told me something during one of our follow-up visits that I think about often. She said, "I spent years taking pills and feeling terrible and wondering why nothing was working. And the answer was something I was doing every single night that nobody ever asked me about. A few crackers and some cheese while watching TV. That's it. That's what was sabotaging everything." Dorothy told me something during one of our follow-up visits that I think about often. She said, "I spent years taking pills and feeling terrible and wondering why nothing was working. And the answer was something I was doing every single night that nobody ever asked me about. A few crackers and some cheese while watching TV. That's it. That's what was sabotaging everything." Dorothy isn't the only patient whose story changed when we looked at what was happening in the evening. Let me tell you about Harold, because Harold's situation adds one more layer to this that I think you need to hear. Harold was 71, a big man, retired construction foreman. He'd built things his entire life with his own hands. Proud, stubborn, the kind of man who didn't like being told what to do, especially by doctors. He came to see me only because his wife practically dragged him in after his blood pressure hit 168/96 on 2 medications. Harold ate dinner late, very late. He and his wife usually ate around 8 p.m., sometimes 8:30, and Harold's dinner wasn't small. He was a big man, and he ate like one. A large portion of red meat most nights, potatoes, bread, sometimes a beer with dinner. And after dinner, Harold would sit on the back porch with another beer and some peanuts, watching the sun go down or watching a game on his phone. He'd eat those peanuts mindlessly for 30 to 45 minutes. Then he'd go inside and fall asleep in his recliner around 10. Sometimes he'd wake up at midnight, move to the bed, and sleep another 5 hours. Harold's pattern was different from Dorothy's. Dorothy's was mindless snacking. Harold's was a combination of late dinner, alcohol, and the fact that his body was trying to digest an enormous meal during the hours it was supposed to be resting. When I explained the circadian insulin response to Harold, when I told him that his late dinner was triggering insulin at the worst possible time, that his beer was preventing his blood pressure from dipping during sleep, that his body was spending the first 3 to 4 hours of sleep trying to digest his meal instead of recovering, Harold looked at me the way he always looked at things he didn't want to believe. Skeptical, arms crossed. "So you're telling me my blood pressure is high because of when I eat dinner?" Partly, yes. The timing and the size and the beer, all of it. Harold wasn't convinced, but his wife was, and his wife controlled what was in the kitchen. So Harold reluctantly moved dinner to 6 p.m., cut his portion size in half, stopped the beer in the evening entirely, gave up the peanuts on the porch. He called me 2 weeks later. He actually called. Harold never called anyone. "You need to explain something to me," he said. "My blood pressure this morning was 148/88. That's 20 points lower than it's been in months. My wife checked it 3 times because she didn't believe it. 20 points in 2 weeks, just from changing the evening routine." Harold's doctor eventually reduced one of his 2 medications. Harold still didn't entirely believe the science, but he believed the numbers. And the numbers were undeniable. Harold's story illustrates something important. The timing of your last meal isn't just about the small snack before bed. If you're eating dinner late, even if you're not snacking afterward, you might still be in the danger zone. Your body needs at least 3 hours between your last food and sleep. For some people, especially those eating large meals with alcohol, you might need even more. Here's another piece of this puzzle that connects everything together, and that I think most people miss entirely. The morning cortisol surge. Your body naturally produces a surge of the hormone cortisol in the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking up. This is called the cortisol awakening response. It's normal and healthy. Cortisol wakes you up, it mobilizes energy, it prepares you for the day, and it causes a natural rise in blood pressure in the morning. This is part of the normal circadian blood pressure pattern we discussed earlier. Blood pressure rises in the morning because cortisol tells it to. That's by design. But here's the problem. If your blood pressure never properly dropped during the night because you ate close to bedtime, you're starting the morning from an already elevated baseline. And then the cortisol surge pushes it even higher. You wake up with blood pressure that's significantly elevated. And that elevated morning blood pressure is what your doctor sees at your appointment. It's what goes into your chart. It's what determines your medication. But the real culprit isn't the morning cortisol. That's normal. The culprit is that your blood pressure never dropped at night in the first place. The cortisol is just adding to an already broken pattern. When you fix the evening eating, when you allow the proper nighttime blood pressure dip to happen, the morning cortisol surge pushes from a much lower baseline. Your morning blood pressure is dramatically lower. Your doctor sees better numbers, and the medications become more effective because they're not fighting against a nighttime blood pressure that never came down. This is why Dorothy's blood pressure dropped so fast. She wasn't just lowering her evening blood pressure, she was fixing the entire 24-hour cycle, allowing the nighttime dip, which meant a lower morning baseline, which meant the cortisol surge didn't push as high, which meant her medications worked better than they had in years. Everything connected. Everything moved together. Before I give you a few more pieces of this system that I think are critical, I need to pause here. If what you've learned so far has been valuable, if you're realizing that your evening eating might be one reason your blood pressure won't cooperate, I'm asking you to do two things. First, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. This is the kind of information your doctor doesn't have time to explain in a 15-minute appointment. The kind of information that can genuinely change your health trajectory if you understand it and act on it. My mission is getting this to the seniors who need it most. Second, share this video. Think about every person you know struggling with blood pressure that won't come down despite medications. Your friends, your family, your neighbors. How many of them are eating in the evening without any idea it's raising their blood pressure while they sleep? One share could start a conversation that changes someone's health. And if you want the complete protocols, the detailed plans, the step-by-step guides for everything I share on this channel, join my free newsletter. Link in the description. Exclusive content, research updates, practical tips, and you'll be the first to know when my comprehensive blood pressure ebook is released, with everything organized into a simple, actionable system. Now, I promised you I wasn't done, and I'm not, because there are two more pieces of this evening system that I consider essential. Two more things that work together with everything I've already described to create a genuinely powerful nighttime blood pressure protection routine. The first involves what you drink in the evening, and it's something most seniors don't think about at all: alcohol. Even small amounts of alcohol in the evening raise blood pressure during sleep. 1 glass of wine, 1 beer, 1 small drink. Research shows that alcohol consumed within 3 to 4 hours of sleep disrupts the normal blood pressure dip. It keeps your sympathetic nervous system more active than it should be during sleep. It fragments your sleep architecture even if you don't notice waking up. And it raises blood pressure during the early morning hours, exactly when cardiovascular risk is already at its highest. Many seniors drink a glass of wine at dinner or a beer in the evening without thinking about it. It feels moderate. It feels harmless. But for blood pressure, there is no truly harmless amount of evening alcohol. If you're drinking in the evening and your blood pressure won't cooperate, this might be a significant factor. Moving the wine to lunch if you still want it, or eliminating it entirely, can make a meaningful difference in your nighttime blood pressure pattern. Dorothy drank a glass of red wine with dinner most nights. We moved it to an occasional glass at lunch instead. Her nighttime blood pressure dip improved measurably within 2 weeks of that single change. The second piece involves the environment you create for sleep. Because your sleep environment directly affects how well your blood pressure drops during the night, and therefore how well your cardiovascular system recovers. Your bedroom should be cool. Research consistently shows that cooler room temperatures promote deeper sleep and better blood pressure dipping. Most sleep researchers recommend between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler than most people keep their bedrooms. When your body is cooler, it sleeps deeper. When it sleeps deeper, blood pressure drops more. When blood pressure drops more, your cardiovascular system recovers better. It's that simple. Your bedroom should be dark. Light exposure, even small amounts from screens or streetlights or nightlights, suppresses melatonin production and interferes with sleep quality. Use blackout curtains if possible. Keep phones and tablets out of the bedroom or at least face down and on silent. Even a small amount of light from a television left on can fragment your sleep enough to impair the blood pressure dip. Your bedroom should be quiet. Noise, even noise you don't consciously register, fragments sleep and prevents the deep, restorative stages where blood pressure drops most significantly. If you live in a noisy area, consider white noise or earplugs. The goal is an environment where your body can fully let go, fully relax, fully allow the blood pressure drop that protects your heart and brain and kidneys. These environmental factors might seem minor. They're not. They determine the quality of sleep you get, which determines whether your blood pressure drops properly during the night, which determines whether your cardiovascular system gets the recovery it needs, which determines your risk of stroke and heart attack and heart failure. Every single one of these factors is within your control. Tonight, Dorothy made all of these changes. Cool bedroom, dark bedroom, quiet bedroom, tea in the evening, breathing practice, no food after 7 p.m., dinner with vegetables and protein and magnesium-rich foods, no alcohol in the evening. And the combination was transformative, not just for her blood pressure, for her entire quality of life. She slept better than she had in a decade. She had more energy, she felt healthier, and her blood pressure was finally, after years of struggling, moving in the right direction without adding more medications. Now I want to give you the practical disclaimer that's important. Everything I've shared today is for educational purposes and should not replace medical care. I am not your personal physician. If you are on blood pressure medications, do not stop taking them because of this video. Do not reduce your doses on your own. Stopping blood pressure medication abruptly can cause dangerous blood pressure spikes that may lead to stroke or heart attack. What I encourage you to do is implement the evening changes I've described. Stop eating 3 hours before bed. Start the tea ritual. Add the brief breathing practice. Adjust your dinner composition. Monitor your blood pressure at home. Keep a log. And then bring that data to your doctor. Show them what's changing. Have the conversation about whether medication adjustment might be appropriate based on your improved numbers. Let your doctor make that decision with you, based on real data, based on clinical judgment. Work with your doctor, not around them. Now let me bring this all together one final time. Tonight, when evening comes, here's exactly what you do. Eat dinner by 7 p.m. at the latest. Make it moderate in size. Include protein. Include vegetables, especially potassium-rich ones like spinach, sweet potato, or tomatoes. Add a handful of nuts or seeds for magnesium. Enjoy the meal. Savor it. This is your last food until morning, and that's okay. Your body doesn't need fuel while it's sleeping. It needs recovery. And the best thing you can give it for recovery is an empty digestive system and a calm nervous system. Around 8 p.m., make yourself a cup of chamomile or rooibos tea. Something warm, something caffeine-free. Sit in your comfortable chair, hold the warm cup, and for 2 to 3 minutes, breathe slowly. Inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds. Feel your body start to shift into rest mode. Feel the tension begin to release. You're not just sitting there missing your snack. You're actively telling your cardiovascular system it's time to start lowering the pressure. You're doing something powerful. Something that works. Watch your television if that's what you enjoy. Read your book. Do whatever makes your evening pleasant. But don't eat. Don't snack. Don't reach for the crackers or the cookies or the cereal. You have your tea. That's enough. That's what your body needs. And every minute that passes without food in your system is another minute your insulin stays low, your sympathetic nervous system stays quiet, and your blood pressure moves closer to the drop it's supposed to make. If you have a glass of wine or beer in the evening, move it to lunch tomorrow. Try going without alcohol in the evening for 3 weeks. See what happens to your sleep. See what happens to your morning blood pressure readings. The difference might surprise you. Make your bedroom cool, dark, quiet. Go to bed at a consistent time. Let your body do what it's designed to do during sleep. Let your blood pressure drop. Let your cardiovascular system repair itself. Give it the environment and the conditions it needs to protect you. You've spent years wondering why your pills weren't working well enough. Part of the answer was your evening routine. Now you know. Now you can change it. And here's what I want you to think about as you sit with your tea tonight instead of your crackers. Dorothy is out there somewhere right now, sleeping soundly, blood pressure dropping the way it's supposed to drop, cardiovascular system recovering the way it's supposed to recover. She didn't take a new medication. She didn't do anything dramatic or difficult. She stopped eating a few hours before bed and replaced it with warm tea and slow breathing. And her blood pressure responded in ways that 3 medications couldn't achieve alone. That could be you. Tonight. Starting tonight. The change is that simple. The results are that real. Every single strategy I've described today works together in one direction. Everything points toward giving your cardiovascular system the best possible nighttime environment to recover, repair, and protect you while you sleep. Stop the evening eating. Start the tea. Breathe slowly with the longer exhale. Make your bedroom a sanctuary for sleep. Feed your body the right nutrients at dinner so they're available overnight. No alcohol after dark. Simple, affordable, accessible. Starting tonight. And here's what I want you to think about as you sit with your tea tonight instead of your crackers. Dorothy is out there somewhere right now, sleeping soundly, blood pressure dropping the way it's supposed to drop, cardiovascular system recovering the way it's supposed to recover. Harold is out there too, watching the sun go down on his back porch without a beer and without the peanuts and with a blood pressure 20 points lower than it was a month ago. 2 people, 2 completely ordinary lives, 2 simple changes to the evening routine, and blood pressure numbers that moved more than years of additional medications could have achieved. They didn't become different people. They didn't have surgery. They didn't take some expensive supplement. They just stopped doing one thing in the evening that nobody ever told them was hurting them. And they replaced it with something simple and comforting that actually helped. A cup of tea. A few slow breaths. Dinner a little earlier with the right foods. That's it. That's the entire transformation. That could be you. Tonight. Starting tonight. The change is that simple. The results are that real. Every single strategy I've described today works together in one direction. Everything points toward giving your cardiovascular system the best possible nighttime environment to recover, repair, and protect you while you sleep. Stop the evening eating. Start the tea. Breathe slowly with the longer exhale. Make your bedroom a sanctuary for sleep. Feed your body the right nutrients at dinner so they're available overnight. No alcohol after dark. Simple, affordable, accessible. Starting tonight. Your body has been trying to do this for you for years. Every single night, your cardiovascular system has been attempting to lower your blood pressure during sleep. It's been trying to repair damaged arteries. It's been trying to recover. But the evening eating kept getting in the way. The insulin kept rising. The sympathetic nervous system kept staying activated. The sleep kept being fragmented. And the cycle continued night after night. Tonight, you can break that cycle. Not with a pill, not with a doctor's visit, not with a complicated protocol. With a cup of chamomile tea and the decision to stop eating 3 hours before bed. That's where it starts. That's where everything changes. Share your experience in the comments as you implement this. Tell me what happens to your sleep. Tell me what happens to your blood pressure. Tell me what questions come up. Your stories will help other seniors who are watching and wondering whether to make these changes. Real experience from real people is the most powerful thing in the world. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video. Join my newsletter. Link in the description. And the most important thing I can say to you as we end. You are not stuck. Your blood pressure is not permanently locked at whatever number it's been showing. Your body wants to bring it down. Your cardiovascular system is designed to protect itself during sleep. All you have to do is stop doing the one thing that's preventing it from doing its job. Stop the evening eating. Give your body the chance it hasn't been getting. And watch what happens. I'll see you in the next video. Start your tea tonight, stop the snacking, and let your body do what it's been trying to do all along.